Hey, how's it going? My name is James Marshall, and you are watching a presentation all about the fundamentals of Microsoft Azure. And if that is not what you're expecting to see right now, then you are probably in the wrong place. But stick around anyway, because you might learn something that helps you with an IT problem and might just make your day a little bit more awesome. My role at Microsoft, where I work, is the UK Azure sales lead for small and medium sized businesses. So I kind of spend most of my time helping people get started, helping our partners get people started on their journey with Microsoft Azure. But my background is in all things technology, and I've been at Microsoft 11 years and worked across a whole range of different things in that time, not least the precursor to things like Office 365. And as I say, now, of course, with Azure. And in the course of the next few minutes, we're going to talk about those real fundamentals. We're going to start by having a conversation, just kind of outlining what Azure is, just so we're all clear, because it's always good to make sure that we're on the same page. And then in a little while, we'll jump into a bit of a view of what the portal looks like and how to get started with it. And I know that there are some fantastic sessions throughout the rest of this event, which will go into more detail around some of the more advanced topics that jump off from what we talk about today. But this session really is just at that very beginning stage. You might be thinking that you already know about some of the fundamentals. Stick around. It's always good to have a little update and to get a refresher. And for those of you that have never used Azure before and are thinking about how to get started, then again, there'll be some good things in here for you as well. Now, you can find me online. As I said, my name is James Marshall. I'm on most places as James B. Marshall, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, wherever you want to find me. I love getting questions. I love following up with people um, after these sorts of things to hear about how you're using technology, hear about the cool ideas you have, the innovation that you're achieving with things like Azure. So feel free to get in touch afterwards, even if it's just to give me some feedback about what you thought of this event. It's always really good to hear from folks like yourself who have taken the time to watch things like this. So thank you, of course, in advance as well for your time and attention. Now you'll be pleased to know that there are no slides for this. There is just me, my face, my wonderful shed, and the demo that I'll give later on. And I think that's important because it's really easy to get caught up in death by PowerPoint. And I don't want to take away from what is a very simple story, which is why we have Azure. Azure is a cloud platform comprised of many data centers around the world, and it's there to provide access to a whole range of services across infrastructure workloads like virtual machines. Everybody kind of familiar with the idea of a virtual machine. We can do that through our infrastructure capabilities, through platform as a service. So where there's more accountability on Azure as a platform to provide some of those services. So for example, a managed instance of a SQL database would be a good example where you don't have to worry about taking all of the underlying infrastructure that is required to create that database. You can just consume the benefit of that by bringing your data and your application along to use it, all the way through to SaaS. And many ISVs and elements of the Azure platform are pre-made, ready to go products and services, as well as the whole marketplace full of those kinds of offers. And I'll touch a little bit about the marketplace later on. So across those three kinds, like disciplines of workloads, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, Azure has capabilities in all three. And most importantly, not just in and of itself, but also providing that bridge to a hybrid cloud environment where you can manage between your on-premises environment and Azure, and also multi-cloud environments where maybe you have a footprint in many clouds, but are looking to drive some consistency and some consolidation around maybe your security posture or your analytics and logging, your identity management, for example. Azure can help with technologies that make all of those kinds of tasks and outcomes very much achievable. It's been around a long time and it is continually expanding. And I used to keep a slide up to date that used to try and talk to the number of regions there were or the number of certifications that there were. The truth is, it's a fool's game trying to keep that updated because every time I go to give a talk, there's a new number. We've added a new region or we've added a new certification or attestation to our belt to help keep customers' data safe and make it as relevant to your industry as possible. And that really is the whole point. We can't expect you to entrust your app's data and all those other things to a hyperscale service like Azure without having all of that investment in security, all of that investment in protection to go behind it. So suffice to say, Microsoft invests a huge amount each year to keep one step ahead as far as keeping the service growing, keeping ahead of security vulnerabilities, all those sorts of things, to provide you with a platform that is going to be suitable for whatever it is that you want to do. So now you kind of understand a little bit about what we're about, and hopefully some of those concepts aren't too unfamiliar. That infrastructure, platform, and software sort of way of thinking about things, and that concept of hybrid cloud or multi-cloud. Hopefully those terms aren't too unusual or alien to you. Moving into then what's good about Azure itself, the fundamentals of the platform. Well, very simply, it's incredibly straightforward to get started, and we speak to a number of different roles and skill sets to make it as easy as possible for people to get started. Whether you're a hardcore, command line driven, highly automated, proficient script writing, sysadmin who's been doing this a long time and just wants to get under the hood and going, cool. You can jump into the Azure command line or using PowerShell or lots of other different technologies to drive that, make that happen. That's cool. You can do that. And there are talks later on around infrastructure as code and kind of cool things like that. Or if you're, a little bit like me, where maybe you dip into a command line every now and again, but it's just way easier to point and click at something. Then there is a whole portal, a graphical user interface that makes it very much easier for folks to get started and to navigate around the service. And it doesn't matter your skill level or your experience level with the cloud. Jumping in is easy enough, and there's a whole rich set of resources that can help you learn what you need to know. Whether it's, as I said, more about how to get more technically deep, or whether it's more about governance and policy and security that might be more interesting to you. There's a whole library of learning materials that sits behind this called Microsoft Learn to help give you that leg up and to take you on a journey towards things like certification, which as an IT pro might be something you're interested in to bolster your CV and to endorse the skills that you've acquired through your learning and through your experience. So everything I'm going to show you in a little while is very accessible, hopefully, and is something that everybody could do today if they wanted to. But if you wanted to know more, then there's Microsoft Learn, or of course you can follow up afterwards with any questions. Just get in touch. So, first thing to note is that anybody can get started. At the very simplest level, you can just go to azure.com, or you can work with a Microsoft partner, for example. You can work with an existing subscription that you might have. Let's say you're an Office 365 customer today. You may already have access to Azure, and you can start going to the Azure portal and starting to have a little root around. So I'm going to share my screen now so that you can have a look at what the Azure portal starts to look like. This is my actually my one. This is real. It is a demo, but it's of a real environment. And you'll see here, I have a bunch of resources now. Without giving the game away, I'm into gaming. I have my own Valheim server, and this is my Azure subscription that is hosting my Valheim server. Valheim's a great game, by the way, but I have a server which hosts an environment that my friends and I can play on. So I'm going to walk you through the portal and a little bit about the resources that we have there. So here, this is kind of like the home page for the Azure portal. If we click up here, just to show there's no secrets here, this is the first page. And you can see across the top here, we have some popular services or most recently used things. I can create a resource very easily by clicking on the create a resource button. I have recent resources in the middle, which show me things that I've interacted with or provisioned recently or otherwise edited and configured. These are here. And again, I can expand this to see all if I need to. And I can navigate through some other areas all the way down to things like I mentioned earlier, Microsoft Learn, or I can jump into Azure Monitor, or I can start to look at cost and that kind of thing. So the idea between this on this first page is to surface up things that are going to be most relevant to you, most likely that you're going to need to click on. One of my favorite areas is a dashboard. So this is great, but from a dashboard perspective, we have the ability to create custom views that pull together visuals that tell the story we want to monitor. For example, it might be the health of an application that we're running on a bunch of services, or it might be a cluster of virtual machines that we're monitoring for a virtual desktop setup, or whatever it might be. We can create multiple dashboards which start to look a little bit like this. So you can see here I have my home dashboard, and if I click, I have actually two dashboards. We're going to stay on home for now. And I've just popped some visuals on here by way of demo. I've got a standard clock view. I've got some markdown, which I can edit very easily as text, and I can add in images and links and different things to provide context about the dashboard, perhaps to other users I might share this with. I've pulled in a visual here which shows the CPU utilization for the server that I have. You can see earlier on I was doing some updates to the server, and that peaked the CPU utilization a little bit. Otherwise, in the last day or so, I haven't actually been on it, so it's been quite quiet. It's dropped down. And then you can see I've pulled in this security metric, which gives me some insight into the health of the security posture of my subscription. But we'll come on to that in a little while. And it's really easy for me to add or delete things from here. I can just click this edit button, and I can add in more tiles, and I can drag these ones to different sizes. And then when I'm done, I can just hit done customizing, and they would stay there. And I can share this with other users in my organization. I can make it my homepage, whatever I want to do. And it's just very easy for me to get at a glance access to the things that might be relevant, rather than having to dive into like deep areas of the Azure platform to tease things out. If I know I've got like a common set of things I need to be aware of, then I can create these dashboards which pull those together. Jumping back to the homepage, though, I mentioned you have these resources. Some of these concepts will be very familiar to some folks, I'm sure. We have these resources. They're grouped together in resource groups. So this is a really easy way to pull many resources together into something that is manageable as a resource group. So you can see here I have my Valheim resource group, and I have all the different things: the virtual machine, the IP address, the network security group, and so on, that form this, I suppose, service, this use case that I'm dealing with. And very easily I can access different actions that I might wish to take with any of the resources or the resource group as a whole. And indeed, if I wanted to delete this, for example, let's say I was done playing Valheim, I didn't need this server anymore, rather than have to go through each one of these one by one, I can just delete the whole resource group. So that encapsulates everything that's in that resource group. I can just delete it in one go. It makes management and tidying up of things easier. So I have access to that. If I jump into a virtual machine, I'm going to click into the server. That's when you can start to get some deeper information about the configuration of the server, its IP address, for example, the size, which instance it's running on. This is running on a B series machine, but there may be different sized virtual machines that you need to use for your particular application. I can see which version of Windows Server happens to be running on it, and the agent that's running on it. Now, all of these things I could pull through the command line if I needed to, but sometimes it's just easier to see these kinds of things visually. And like I say, I can start, stop. I can connect to the machine if I needed to open up a remote desktop session to be able to manage the machine if I wanted to access the desktop and manage it that way. I can get into things like advisor recommendations. So if I click onto this, I have an agent running on the server. This is going to give me some insights into ways that I can improve the running of the machine. And so I have some here, for example, which give me some advice like I should encrypt the temporary disks, for example, on this machine. That's a high impact security recommendation that's being surfaced up to me here. I should install endpoint protection on the virtual machine. Again, another high impact security related recommendation. And then from a reliability standpoint, it's pointing out that I should enable replication. So it's surfacing up advice to me to help me improve the resilience or improve the security of my machine. And if I click on this, let's say it's the install endpoint protection one. If I click into this, then I can see which virtual machine. I happen to know that I was already on that server anyway. I can select the virtual machine that's impacting. I only have one in this instance. I can click install on one VM. It's going to offer me up the endpoint protection agent that I have access to. In this case, it's the Microsoft anti-malware one. I follow some documentation, and then I can just click create, and I would follow through all of these processes, and it would then install that onto the machine. Now, we're not going to do that today because this is more of a fundamentals level conversation. The point in clicking through that is just to show that I can go from a recommendation in Advisor all the way through to an action in just a few clicks, and then I'll have improved my security posture as a result. So we can get some great insights through things like the portal. If I jump back to the homepage, I can close all these off, or I can just click on the homepage here. The next area I'm going to jump into is cost management. Something that people are always very interested in is, how do I manage my cloud costs? The Azure Portal has the ability to show you some real insight into the way your resources are being used. Now, I only have one set of resources for my Valheim server, so I don't have a whole organization's worth, but you'll start to see some of the things that we can garner from this and how they can be quite powerful. So I click into cost analysis. I'm going to let these load, and I can get an idea of not only the burn rate of my machine, but then also how much it might potentially cost. So I can see so far it's cost just over $50. It's forecasting to cost just under $95 at the current burn rate. Now, of course, that might be absolutely fine. I may also want to look at ways that I can reduce that cost. So, for example, I could look at automating the shutdown of the server at the end of the working day, so that I'm not paying, obviously this server at the moment is on 24 hours a day. I could reduce some of my costs by turning it off when it's not needed, or resizing the instance to a less powerful instance when it's not at peak use, or there might be a whole bunch of different things. But I can see what elements of the services are contributing to the costs of the virtual machine itself, storage, network. If I had many locations, I could see where that spend is being accumulated. And indeed, if I had many resource groups, I could see which resource groups are driving that cost. In this case, I only have one, so 100% of the cost is coming from one resource group. But you can imagine that you could potentially have many that comprise this list. You can set alerts and budgets through this tool as well. And that's just another example of a very useful way to access the portal, to get insights about how your environment is running. There are other ways, many other elements to this. And I would encourage anybody to just sign up and have an explore around. I want to jump into creating a resource though, as another example of a great experience through the portal. So I said earlier on, you can click this button here to create a resource. If I click that, it takes me to this part of the portal where I have some popular things surfaced up to me. I have a list of categories, and this is really easy to get started. You can just select, let's say I want a Windows Server 2019 data center instance. I can just click create. I can follow the wizard by populating details, following, answering all these questions. I can click through the blades, and by answering just a few questions in just a few moments, I will have everything I need to spin up a virtual machine. And crucially, I don't think it will let me do this at this stage. I might be able to skip ahead. It's going to tell me some information is missing. That's okay. Crucially, once I've followed through all of these questions, I can download, you might see here grayed out slightly while it's just thinking. I can download a template for automation. So I might fill all of these things out one time, but know that this is a task, or this is a type of environment that I have to create often. When I get to the end, I can download that as a template, and then I can script and automate that process in future. So I don't have to fill this in every single time. It's very easy to create resources and get started that way. And I can search for things as well. So while these are the sort of popular things that get surfaced up to me, maybe I want to search for something that's a little bit more niche. So like a Palo Alto solution, for example. I type that in, it's going to take me to the marketplace, and now I can see all of the solutions that that come, when I search. Maybe I'll want to search for maybe a WordPress blog that's already been configured for me. Again, I can search the marketplace and I can see all of these solutions here, and some are free, some cost money. Some are managed services, and some are just ones that I can create myself. And rather than have to worry about starting from scratch and building up every aspect of a solution, I can take one straight off the shelf out of the marketplace and get started with it. So, similar process. I would go in, I would click create, I would answer some questions about what I'm trying to achieve, and it would go away and within a few moments begin creating that for me. And sometimes it takes just a few seconds to create it. Other times it might be a whole environment that you're spinning up, which might take a couple of hours depending on the complexity, but it can all be done in just a few clicks through the portal. Now, the last thing I mentioned about being able to jump into things like the command line, you can do that from within the portal. So you'll notice that you have the sort of homepage, if you like. You can search through resources and documentation here. And you have this little button up here, which if I click on that, fires up a Cloud Shell directly in the browser. And I can pick whether I want Bash or PowerShell. Let's click Bash, create storage. And in just a few moments, I'll be able to then use the command line interface directly through the browser to do the tasks that I want, as much as I can do it graphically. Of course, I don't have to be in the browser in order to do that. I can do that through through my device as well. There we go. So now I have a terminal connected, and in just a few seconds, I'll be able to start typing away and managing it that way as well. There we go. So considering that's the first time I've done that for the subscription, you can see how quick that was to spin that up. Future, I won't have to create that storage area. I'll just be ready to go. So I can close that off. So that's a whistle stop tour of what Azure is. Remember at the start we talked about the fact that it's a collection of services hosted across a number of data centers and regions around the world that encompasses infrastructure workloads, platform workloads, and software as a service workloads, and forms the fabric of that hyperscale cloud environment. And we talked about the portal, and we jumped into a demo there and about how you can easily create, manage, and monitor resources, monitor things like security and cost, get access to recommendations and action them straight away through the portal. And areas that we could dive into, and in future sessions, maybe we'll get more advanced into how we then apply this to a multi cloud or hybrid cloud environment, and how we pull in insights and telemetry from other apps and services. There's a whole range of things that you can do with this once you kind of understand the fundamentals. I mentioned as well that if you want to learn more about any of these things in more depth, you can go to Microsoft Learn. There's a link in the portal that takes you to the Learn website, or it's just microsoft.com/learn. Or if you search for it in your favorite search engine, you'll find it as well. But there's a whole bunch of resources there that can help you get started. And indeed, future sessions of this event, things like looking into more depth around infrastructure as code, management, automation, those kinds of things, those topics are covered later on. So all that leaves me to say really is thank you for giving me your time. Hopefully that's given you some food for thought about how you might get started with Azure and kind of what it's all about. And if not, maybe it's given you a refresher of some things that you already knew, or maybe giving you some inspiration to try something else out. But good luck with whatever you do next with your Azure journey, and I hope it's successful. And I would love to hear from you. Once again, my name's James Marshall. I'm james.marshall@microsoft.com, or James B. Marshall on most other places. And let me know how you get on. Let me know what you thought about this talk, whether it's been useful, or whether there's something I missed that you'd love to know more about. Maybe we can catch up about that. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the event. And thank you again for your time.